How thrilling is surviving on a deserted island? And with beautiful, busty women to keep you company. 9 people form 3 teams and arrive on the island, where they must survive
With
for 21
no
days
maps
using the island's
and no
resources
tools,
to win
they
a
must
prize of $3
scavenge
million.
the island for wreckage
They
and
are
debris.
randomly divided into 3-person teams and land on different parts of the island. At the northernmost point of the island, there's an international shipping route where they can light a signal fire. Only then will they have a chance to signal passing ships for rescue. The first team to land includes Andrew, Amber, and Trick, who all have long, flowing hair that could rival any woman's. They are all returning contestants from previous seasons. Andrew, who once quit because a tiny ant bite caused him so much pain that he had to be treated by a doctor, is back to prove he's not a wimp. Amber, with his stylish outfits and impressive assets, is also back, and I can't take my eyes off him, even if it blinds me. Amber once managed to support 2 men all by himself, so I believe he'll perform well again this time. Despite Amber's striking presence, some people are just born to be the main character. Trick, with his flowing hair, looks like a woman from afar but is actually another wimp up close. As the team leader, Andrew is constantly motivating his teammates, and Amber looks at him with admiration. Such a sexy man, I almost want to milk him. As soon as they approach the shore, they spot a saltwater crocodile in the distance. The less capable contestants see it as a beast to fear, while the more capable ones see it as a source of protein. Andrew's team lands in an area with the highest concentration of caimans, which are their biggest challenge. The island is also teeming with poisonous snakes and swarms of mosquitoes more terrifying than zombies. The coastline is made up of coral reefs. For the sake of the show, the producers make them swim 200 meters to the shore, turning a few seconds swim into a 10-minute ordeal. They eagerly strip off their clothes, and no one can resist Amber's boldness. Their swim is quite thrilling. Little do they know, there are crocodiles underwater. 12 kilometers away, the second team begins to land. This team includes Brent, the stunning Carla, and the brooding Nain. Their coastline is covered in volcanic rocks and sea snakes. Brent's team also consists of 2 men and 1 woman. If Carla weren't wearing a ripped outfit, I might have mistaken her for another burly male contestant. But on closer inspection, Carla is not only fair-skinned but also quite well endowed. This team is quite strong. Brent has excellent hunting experience from previous seasons. They also have to swim a few hundred meters to reach the shore. Despite her larger build, Carla is quite attractive, and I hope they perform well. 9 kilometers away, the third team begins to land. This team has 2 women, which is just amazing. Is this survival or a vacation? This team includes Cher, Candace, and a guy named Justin. Fans who have watched my commentary on the island survival show might recognize Cher, who left the competition after failing to conceive a child despite dating all the men. She's back for another shot at island survival. Candace, with her stunning figure and looks, is probably the most beautiful female contestant this season. Justin, the show's cameraman, managed to get paired with 2 women, which might not be entirely coincidental. The third team's coastline is teeming with sharks and crocodiles. But with 2 women by his side, Justin would probably die happy. Amber's team has successfully landed. The environment is beautiful, but Amber quickly notices something amiss. The beach is swarming with blood-sucking flies like vampires, biting them all over. They must rely on the island's resources to survive for 21 days, using discarded bottles to collect water and old ropes for various purposes. Brent's team also begins to land. But their coastline is not a sandy beach, it's sharp rocks. Forget hunting for protein, even walking is a challenge. They are shocked upon landing but realize they must make use of the island's waste. Nain finds a broken fan on the rocks, which is just trash to ordinary people but could be useful in survival. They can turn trash into treasure, using palm leaves to make blades. Next, they need to find fresh water. Candace's team swims to the shore, which looks like a mangrove forest. Cher notices a lot of discarded items on the coast which they can use. Seeing the 2 women so enthusiastic, Justin decides to let them take the lead. They collect everything they find, which will be very useful for their survival. They use these items to search for fresh water and build a shelter nearby. They have no map and rely entirely on their instincts. Brent's team finally leaves the rocks and reaches the beach. Here, they also start collecting waste, finding joy in picking up trash. On the beach, they see footprints, likely from 3 wild boars, which can weigh up to 145 pounds and have sharp tusks. They search the island for food and fresh water, following the footprints, hoping to find water. There are many broken fishing nets, which they can use to catch more fish. Andrew even finds a fire-starting tool. Although it's worn out, it's still a useful lighter. In just an hour, they've collected a lot of trash. Next, they need to find a place to build a shelter and locate fresh water. Their biggest challenge is not having a map, so they don't know where to find water or resources and must explore blindly. Justin's team is still walking through the mangroves, finding only salt water, making it hard to find a place to settle. Andrew's team has been walking in the jungle for 3 hours, surrounded by thorny plants. Getting pricked by one would make you squeal like a pig. They wander through the jungle, unsure of how far they've gone. Fortunately, they hear the sound of running water nearby. Andrew's team finds a small stream, which, though not large, has flowing water. Amber sees this as a good sign. There might be fish at the source of the stream. Soon, they find an abandoned car. How did a car end up in the jungle, reduced to just a shell? Amber thinks it's older than his grandmother. But Andrew believes the car has only been there for about 8 years. By now, they've collected a lot of resources. Trick suggests building a shelter here. Andrew agrees, as there's water and the resources are too heavy to carry far. Amber thinks they need to start a fire quickly. The sun is setting, and the mosquitoes at night are terrifying. Brent's team is still looking for a suitable place to build a shelter, with fresh water being a decisive factor. They soon find fresh water. Brent agrees that the sun is setting and they should build a shelter nearby. They quickly start building in a clearing. Justin's team is still on the move, finding only salt water. Cher thinks building a shelter is the priority and suggests finding a higher ground. Andrew's team starts a fire using a broken lighter, creating sparks by rubbing the flint and gears. Andrew is excited, showing his wimpy side. He lies on the ground, trying to start a fire with the tiny flint while the others watch. Why don't they try multiple fire-starting methods at once? Justin's team, without a knife, can only use stones to cut branches, making shelter building very difficult. Without a shelter, Candace feels unsafe. As night falls, the mosquitoes become aggressive, having not tasted blood in a long time. At night, Brent's team is also tormented by mosquitoes, unable to sleep. Mosquitoes are everywhere, and nothing can drive them away. Andrew's team faces the same problem, covered in mosquito bites. Only imagine the worst. It's so scary. Where should we go? I'm about to jump on your back. Hey, that was scary. That was really scary. I can't handle this night.
Okay, that was scary.
That was scary.
That really did scare me.
Yeah. I can't believe this is night 1.
The sounds and movements outside the shelter are loud, making it feel like wild animals are all around. They are too scared to sleep. The next morning, Andrew's team wakes up covered in mosquito bites. Amber insists they must start a fire today, or even his impressive assets will be drained by mosquitoes. Andrew decides to use a lens to start a fire. Though he's a wimp, he's quite diligent. They use ropes to make a bow drill, needing a flat piece of wood. Andrew uses a shell as a knife, but it's ineffective. He resorts to smashing the wood with a stone, but it doesn't work. Maybe he's not strong enough, but he keeps trying. Brent's team explores the area after waking up and finds airplane wreckage, just a wing, with no sign of the rest. Brent thinks it's useless, but Nain believes the aluminum can be used as a rain shield. He also thinks there must be more parts nearby. He figured this was just a small piece of the plane and that more parts had to be nearby. Sure enough, they found more plane debris. This island is something else. You can find plane and car parts. They kept exploring and discovered more plane components. The items were very useful, including a pair of goggles for diving to catch fish and broken glass for making knives. They took everything they could carry back to their shelter. Meanwhile, Justin was still struggling, and Candace was covered in bites. They still hadn't built a shelter. They hadn't even found the most crucial thing, a water source. Yesterday, there was seawater here, but now it's all dried up. The tides surprised them. They kept searching for fresh water and finally discovered a new source. They filled their bottles. With water secured, they could focus on surviving. Trick and Amber came back from gathering supplies, and Andrew told them he planned to start a fire by drilling wood and needed their help. They found a plank and just needed to make a crack in the middle to drill the wood for fire. They wrapped a stick with rope and kept pulling it back and forth. But the method didn't seem to work, so they had to think of other ways. Brent's team kept collecting debris, finding plane parts scattered everywhere. They found a fuel gauge and a magnifying glass which could be used to start a fire. He brought the items back to the shelter, giving his teammates hope for fire. Brent used the magnifying glass to focus sunlight and start a fire. Although there was smoke, the sun wasn't always out. They kept trying for hours, but the fire still didn't catch. Nane's face got sunburned. Brent went to the stream to keep trying and saw thick smoke rising. Nane smiled brightly. As the smoke increased, Carla got excited too. Finally, Brent successfully started the fire. With fire, they could boil water and cook food. Their team was the first to get a fire going. Nane started sharpening tools, and Brent saw an armadillo nearby, a great source of protein. Will Brent be able to surprise his teammates? Stay tuned for the next episode. Have you ever witnessed such a fun survival experience on a deserted island? With gorgeous women around, catching prey by day 2, these pufferfish are a few pounds each and plentiful. A feast of grilled meat until you're stuffed. Survive for 21 days and you'll get $100,000. The contestants probably laughed themselves awake from their dreams. On day 2, Brent used a magnifying glass to start a fire and then explored around the shelter. He discovered a pufferfish in a concealed spot. It's a protein jackpot, but it's pretty smart. But it was hiding under a rock. Brent slowly used a stick to pin the pufferfish. It was so easy to control the prey. Next, he simply grabbed the pufferfish's tail and pulled. No need to worry about hurting it. In pain, the pufferfish would eventually let go. Brent kept tugging and hitting until he got it out. Its shell was tough like an armadillo's. Brent pinned the pufferfish with a stick. Both were stubborn, locked in a skillful duel. Brent snapped the pufferfish's spine with the stick, leaving it defenseless. Though he won, he deeply regretted his actions, feeling he had acted too hastily. Guilt washed over him and tears welled up in his eyes. This pufferfish weighed a few pounds and could serve as dinner. Brent carried the meat back to the shelter. His teammates didn't seem too surprised, likely because they weren't hungry yet. Kara, however, felt a bit disgusted, because she's a vegetarian. It does sound absurd, a vegetarian in a survival show. Even Nane was surprised, but Kara knew surviving without meat would be tough in this situation. Next, they had to figure out how to deal with the few pounds of meat. Nane used the fan blades to make a knife, one side as a saw, the other as a knife. Brent tried to open the pufferfish's belly, but Nane's knife barely made a dent. The belly was thicker than Nane's face. Nane couldn't believe it. The thickness was comparable to the foundation on his wife's face. Nane struggled to cut it, but it had no effect. In the end, they just broke the shell open. Catching it wasn't this hard, but butchering it almost strangled Brent. 5 kilometers away, Justin's team reached the mangrove bay. It was low tide, and they weren't here to catch seafood, but to pick up some coconuts and useful trash that had drifted ashore. Cher found a comb and a fishing net. Justin wasted no time combing his hair, knowing he was with 2 girls. They could miss meals, but their hair had to look perfect. He relied on his hairstyle to charm the 2 girls. Justin and the girls kept searching in the water. Currently, they had no shelter, and food was even more scarce. They discovered an abandoned boat, which was just an empty shell. But it was still very useful to them. They scavenged for usable supplies on the boat and found an old battery. It might be enough to start a fire. Shell also found an iron pot, which could be used to boil water and cook food. While Justin was climbing the tree to get the pot, he saw a bird nearby. It looked quite silly. Its wings seemed to be broken, probably seeking human help. The girls, Candace and Shell, felt pity for it. They found the bird adorable and, since it was only the second day, they weren't hungry yet. The bird even swam towards them. Candace waded in to get closer, and they soon caught the injured bird. They tied it up with a rope. The bird probably couldn't understand what was happening. They covered it with a lid to keep it. Candace planned to come back and save it after they made a fire. Meanwhile, 12 kilometers away, Andrew's group was building a shelter. Andrew was doing most of the work while Amber and Trick messed around. They failed to make a fire last night, got bitten by mosquitoes, and couldn't sleep. Today, they were still struggling to make a fire. They probably didn't know how to start one. They continued to gather useful items in the jungle. Amber found a helmet, likely left from a battle, which could be used as an iron pot. If they could make a fire, they could boil water. Trick found a small cup and a mirror, which made Andrew very excited. The mirror could be used to start a fire, and he was very grateful for it. With the mirror, Andrew felt like a man again. Next, they prepared to make a fire. Shell gave fire making a shot too, using a battery. The idea was straightforward: short-circuit the battery to generate heat. Connect the battery's positive and negative terminals with a metal piece to make it conduct electricity and overheat. Using resistance would produce sparks. It would create sparks. Shell put the battery in the tinder, but even though the metal piece heated up, it couldn't light the tinder. Candace and Justin came to assist. The girls felt guilty about the fire not starting yet, worried about the birds suffering under the lid. At this moment, they were still struggling to make a fire. Candace had to go outside to look for more materials, while Andrew's group had already started using a mirror to ignite a fire. But it's not as good as a magnifying glass. A flat mirror is relatively hard to focus with. They tried dripping water on the mirror to use the water to focus the sunlight. This method works, but it requires direct sunlight. If the mirror isn't level, the water will just run off. They were wasting time with this. They might as well have just started a fire by friction. Right now, they have enough water and shelter, so they should focus on daily survival. Poland was already dealing with prey, a ballfish weighing a few pounds, and after gutting, there was a shell left. It's 2.9 pounds of pee and fart, and I thought I could have a full meal, and there wasn't much meat after the shell was removed. But no matter what, Brent's group was the first to make a fire and enjoy grilled meat. Meanwhile, Andrew and Amber are asleep in the shelter. Kirk steps out and discovers a bird's nest, perfect for tinder. They attempt fire making again, this time using bamboo sticks. They put the tinder inside the bamboo and rubbed 2 bamboo sticks quickly. The heat built up at the bamboo's opening. If you create enough friction, you can start a fire. Andrew explained this to Amber, thinking she'd give it a shot, but it turned out he was doing it himself while Amber watched. In the end, his hands were exhausted, so he had to take turns with Trick. The two of them kept trying. Even with all our hard work, we couldn't get a fire going, leaving everyone really disappointed. Candace went looking for fire-starting materials and found steel wool, perfect for igniting with a battery. If they can start a fire now, they will have everything they need. Just place the steel wool into the tinder and use the battery to ignite it directly. A miraculous moment happened. They got a spark and made a fire. Now, they can boil water to drink. They could save the hoofed fox, but when they checked, the tide had risen, trapping it inside. The fox drowned. Although they said sorry, they all knew what the fox's death really meant. A barbecue feast seemed certain. Andrew's team is the only one still without fire, despite Andrew's best efforts. But he still couldn't get a fire going. He knew that without fire, they wouldn't have warmth at night. So, they tried a fourth method to start a fire. They tried the old-school method of rubbing sticks together to make embers. It's a big energy drain. They took turns with the sticks, but still couldn't get a fire going. They began to lose hope. Meanwhile, the girls went from saving the bird to butchering it, with Candace sharpening stones for tools. This bird has more meat than Brent's pufferfish. This roasted meat feast will surely fill them up. I don't get this. Candace said she's a vegetarian but mentioned needing to eat meat to survive in the wild. But to be so proactive in butchering this bird? The bird has a lot of meat, probably enough to last them over 5 days. The girls' group might not be the strongest, but their luck is incredible. Candace swiftly prepared the bird. Brent's group roasted the pufferfish and were lost in the joy of eating it, even without seasoning. But when you're starving, anything tastes amazing. The fish lasted for 2 meals, but right after they ate, a swarm of mosquitoes showed up. The mosquitoes' buzzing spoiled their meal, just like it did for Candace's group, who also had a ton of mosquitoes. But the roasted meat was amazing. Andrew's group had it the worst. They couldn't even start a fire, let alone enjoy roasted meat. The camera captured swarms of mosquitoes. Nights were a nightmare, with contestants unable to sleep, constantly scratching and swatting. Nighttime was even scarier than daytime. All the teams couldn't avoid the mosquito army at night. It was now the 3rd day. Most nights were spent swatting mosquitoes, with ticks biting their skin. The bugs here were truly terrifying. Today's goal remained making a fire. Brent's group had one last night, but it didn't deter the mosquitoes. Today, they aimed to tweak their shelter to fend off mosquitoes by digging a fire pit around it. They used the fire's heat to repel mosquitoes and spread last night's ashes on the ground to deter ticks. Kara appreciated having 2 teammates who worked well together. They were doing pretty well now. Candace's group woke up early and had roasted meat for breakfast. Their biggest problem was the termites on the ground. This had its pros and cons. They decided to locate a termite nest. Burning it releases camphor, which helps fumigate insects. In short, the termite nest smell can keep mosquitoes away. They cracked it open and brought it back to their shelter for this purpose. Trick was still worried about making a fire. They kept looking for suitable fire-starting materials and found a stream. The flowing water seems safe, but drinking it directly could be risky. Trick is wandering aimlessly. He suddenly sees a wild boar nearby. With so many animals around, there's plenty of protein if you know what you're doing. Andrew and Amber are arguing in the shelter. Amber insists on making a fire first, but Andrew and the others are always tied up with other tasks. It's not like Andrew doesn't want to make a fire. They've tried many ways but failed. You can't really fault them for that. But since Amber's a girl, she can't be blamed. The guys are at fault. Trick heads back to the shelter and informs them about the wild boar. Amber and the others are napping in the shelter when they suddenly hear rustling from the trees. Trick is clueless about what's happening. A large tree is falling. They jump up in fright, but luckily, the tree doesn't hit them. The fallen tree can provide them with plenty of firewood. Will they finally get a fire going next episode? Don't miss the next update. Surviving on a deserted island feels like a vacation with beautiful women around, and they ate so much barbecue they were stuffed. It's the third day on the island, and while Andrew's team is still arguing about daily life, Brent's team is already focused on improving their shelter. Brent worries it might rain soon, so he plans to use the nearby airplane wreckage to make a rainproof shelter. Kara was initially reluctant, thinking the wings were too heavy, but Brent persuaded her. Nain also supported Brent's idea, and they returned to the wreckage to select a wing. The aluminum material of these wings is quite thin, making it easy for two people to lift. However, as soon as Nain lifts it, he feels pain in his shoulder. Brent immediately starts complaining, saying a grown man should not act so weak. Kara, hearing this, looks helpless and says, "Everybody wants to be better, and everybody says it hurts. Everyone has their own role in the group, not my style. Let's all know you're going to start." He's a straight shooter who doesn't know how to handle that kind of personality. Nain found a thicker stick, but it was still hard to lift, especially since walking in front meant getting scratched on the backside. Seeing Nain struggling, Brent switched places with him. During the transport, Nain's performance frustrated Brent, but in the end, they managed to bring the wing back with great effort. They placed it on top of the shelter to make a roof. Now we have So right, this shelter may be cramped, but at least it can keep the rain out when it matters. Having a roof over our heads makes us feel a lot safer. However, Andrew's team still hasn't made any progress. He's feeling immense pressure, having never failed for this long before. He must succeed in making fire this week, or else he won't get any peace. I think the stress of making fire has everyone on edge. They're all pointing out what others are doing wrong but not showing how to do it right. It's getting really frustrating. Sorry, I'm with you. I'm too tired and hungry. The whole world revolves around making fire every day, and it's something new every time. Everyone is really frustrated. We need to move to the beach. On the fifth day, Justin's team is in the mangrove area. Candace mentioned she slept well last night. The termite nest really does repel mosquitoes. Cheryl suggested fishing since it's low tide and their spot is ideal. They plan to use leftover pelican heads from yesterday as bait, placing them in the water to trap fish and crabs when the tide goes out. The plan seems good, but after one night, the bait was full of maggots. The two girls handled the stinky bait, tying the pelican heads to the water tank. The bait is bound to attract fish. Cher and Candace are doing most of the work while Justin is off somewhere. They placed the bait in deeper water, filled the tank, and secured it to a tree branch, hoping to catch fish. Meanwhile, Amber is trying to make a fire, working so fast that Trick is stunned. Unfortunately, her attempt fails again. Amber desperately needs fire to avoid bug bites, leaving Andrew and Trick feeling helpless. Drew and Trick are also feeling helpless. Trick's area is very damp, and moving would be the best option. Amber is the first to agree, but Andrew disagrees. He thinks moving is a waste of energy because, in a previous season, he had to quit the competition due to moving. Now he has a psychological block about it. But Amber insists that Andrew move. Only by finding a dry place can they successfully make fire. Trick also really wants to move. After some discussion, they decide to head north to higher latitudes to find a dry spot. Today, we're planning to move. Trick took some tinder materials, while Amber grabbed an old fishing net and some bottles and jars. Basically, anything useful. Trick made a sharp hunting spear out of glass, while Andrew wrapped his feet with rope to protect them on the long walk. Andrew found a knife nearby, which is great because it makes things much easier. After getting everything ready, they plan to use the sun's position to determine their direction. Hopefully, they'll find a good spot. Brent takes Nain out every day to look for useful items. The island is littered with trash. While they were collecting wood, a wild boar appeared. It seemed completely unaware of the danger humans posed. Brent swore he would catch it, and they were already discussing hunting strategies. They had over a dozen cooking plans even before the hunt. Brent planned to hide and use ropes to trap the boar. Whether it would work or not was uncertain, but Brent spoke with such confidence that it seemed the boar was destined to end up on their plates. Meanwhile, the chill group returned to their shelter only to find their fire had gone out. Life was incredibly tough, but at least they could still use batteries and steel wool to start a fire. Unfortunately, the batteries were running low, and each shake produced only a few sparks. After Candace returned with water, they managed to get the fire going, but there was no guarantee it would work next time. Brent went to the airplane wing to find cables to trap the wild boar. He planned to set up steel wires to catch it as it passed by. Brent and Kara tried flipping the fuselage over several times without success, so they ended up pushing it down a slope, which was exhausting. Kara sees great potential in the plane for hunting the wild boar, so Brent gathered steel wires from it. On a deserted island, every resource counts. While Kara and Brent cleaned the plane, Nain found river shrimp and plans to make tools to catch them, though his method of just putting a bucket in the water seems dubious. Meanwhile, Andrew's group is the most unfortunate, still searching for shelter and getting scratched by branches as they move through the jungle. They are scratched and bruised from the tough path. Amber is unsure of their direction, so they keep moving. Without a map, they don't know how far they've gone until they finally see the ocean. Though they've reached the coast, they're still on a cliff. They sit and enjoy the view, finding comfort in having escaped the jungle. Andrew plans their descent into a dense mangrove area, aiming to reach the beach 3 kilometers away. They reached the beach, and the tide had receded. With a fishing net, they could gather plenty of seafood. The shore had many tall coconut trees. They decided to build their shelter there and plan their living arrangements tomorrow. Later, Nain arrived at the creek. Checking his shrimp traps, he found that he had caught quite a few river shrimp, which made him very confident. Although it wasn't a huge amount, it was enough to cook a pot of fresh shrimp porridge for the night. Brent's group could survive for 21 days with the food from the creek, and if they managed to catch a wild boar, they would definitely be the top contenders. Brent skewered the river shrimp and roasted them over the fire. The simple method produced a gourmet meal that made their mouths water. Despite the delicious shrimp, Brent still wanted to hunt a pig. Andrew's team aimed to use the remaining time to start a fire. Will they manage to get it going? Stay tuned for the next video update. Living on a deserted island with a big wave girl, we gather seafood at low tide. There are so many crabs we can't eat them all. Every day we feast on roasted crabs. On the 9th day, Brent checks the traps daily. But once again, the traps are empty. Fresh marks are near the trap, but they can't catch it. The wild boar even bit off a branch nearby. This infuriates Brent. The frequent appearance of the wild boar feels like a huge insult to him. Brent vows to catch this wild boar.
I am going to get you.
While they were taking a nap, Nain breaks a tree nearby, waking up Brent and Kara. Brent has always looked down on Nain. Whatever Nain does now is wrong in Brent's eyes. Their conflict is ongoing. Kara, caught in the middle, doesn't know how to handle it and is too tired to care. But as a team, they need harmony, so Kara tries to comfort Nain. Once they calm down, they all head to the trap to check it out. The wild boar is getting bolder, and they need to catch it for a meal. Brent discusses how the boar might be getting through the trap. They really need the protein. They reset the trap. Brent is sure they'll snag the boar this time. On the other hand, Andrew's group is thriving. They went hungry for 8 days. Once they got a fire going, they began enjoying roasted crabs and a steady seafood supply. Now, they have everything they need. Every day, they gather seafood and live it up. This beach has turned their luck around. During low tide, they search for crabs in the water. They soon gather an impressive number of small crabs. One by one, they toss them onto the shore. There are so many crabs that they can't pick them all up. They even caught a small fish. In just a few minutes, they've got lunch covered. Living off seafood on a deserted island is incredible, but Justin's group has it the hardest. They're down to just 2 people. After Candace left due to illness, Justin and Zeal head to the shore to find food. The rocks here probably trap some fish, but they're mostly small. They plan to catch and roast them on skewers. But these small fish are hard to catch. Zeal is in charge of catching fish here, while Justin explores elsewhere. He notices a sleeping crocodile across the way. If only Justin could dive in. He figured this crocodile could last him for 21 days. Justin slowly approached the small crocodile. As night falls, Brent and Nain are at it again, bickering as usual. Brent just keeps picking on Nain. By day 10, things were still rough. Nain woke up griping that Brent had dumped burnt firewood on his bed the previous night. Brent bullied Nain like this, it was really too much anyway. They were arguing all morning. Nell's face was blackened when he was bullied. Nain, who never argued before, was drenched in sweat today. As the argument went on, Kara jumped in too. She despised the tension between Brent and Nain, which left Hiroshi utterly exasperated. Eventually, things fell apart and everyone lay down to rest. Brent checked the shrimp traps, hoping to get some protein to boost their energy. After cooling off, Kara and Nain felt guilty about their actions today. However, they're still holding hands and remain close friends. Justin's group is now just 2 people and struggling. They haven't hunted, and Shell's leg injury keeps him from walking far. All the pressure's on Justin now. He's hustling daily to keep things going, while the other groups are either starving or bickering. Meanwhile, Andrew's group is doing well. Amber enjoys coconut water, Andrew relaxes in a bath, and Trick collects pies on the beach. He heads to the rocks, hoping to find some sea urchins to eat, but the waves are huge right now. Finding food is really tough. From the rocks, he saw a 2-meter-long crocodile in the distance. There was no way Trick could handle it. Seeing the crocodile nearby terrified everyone. For safety's sake, Tarek decided to retreat for now. Crocodile tracks still marked the shore, suggesting it often visited. If they could catch it, then the coming days would be much easier. Envoy is well aware of the dangers of a crocodile, especially a wild one of this size. Catching it would be very risky, so Envoy advised against messing with the crocodile. Andrew agreed it was too dangerous, and no one supported Tarek's plan. Meanwhile, Brent's group was still mired in their conflicts. Whatever they were discussing was pointless. They should be using that time to find food instead. Kara can't stand the constant arguing. She decides to leave the group tomorrow and look for other teams. Nain decides to join Kara in leaving, hoping to find a better group. Brent's eyes turned green when he heard this. These 2 rebellious teammates plan to leave, but Brent is staying. He swears to catch that wild boar. Brent doesn't mind his teammates leaving, but that wild boar must die. It's a personal vendetta. Brent tells them to go ahead. Once he catches the boar, he'll bring the meat to find them. Meanwhile, Justin heads to the shore after the tide recedes. He plans to look for some hermit crabs. Since Zeal can't walk properly, Justin has to do more work. But Justin can't even catch a single hermit crab. He sees many fruits on the nearby trees but isn't sure if they're poisonous. After sniffing them for a bit, he still hesitates. Justin takes a tiny bite to test. If he's fine after a while, they should be safe. He rests under the tree, thinking if he doesn't wake up, the food was poisonous. Meanwhile, Andrew's group is staying in a Coast Guard shelter. It's high tide now. They sit in the shelter and enjoy the view. Trick has been wanting to hunt a crocodile. With crocodile meat, their next challenge would be a breeze. But Andrew and Amber just want to take it easy. Trick tells them if he doesn't return in an hour, they should come looking for him or call the show crew. After giving his instructions, he heads out with a small knife. Amber thinks Trick only wants to catch a crocodile without considering the risks. But Trick isn't afraid. He searches for crocodile tracks with his knife, examines them, and decides they belong to a crocodile. Now he just has to wait for the crocodile to return. But the crocodiles here are very alert, making it hard to get close. Zeal waits in the shelter for a long time without seeing Justin. When he goes out, he finds Justin sleeping. This lazabone said he was going to find food but ended up napping. Yelling his name gets no reaction. He's out cold. Zeal has to nudge him awake. Turns out, it wasn't about the fruit being poisonous. Justin was simply being lazy and napping. Even after being woken up, he acts confused. I've never seen anyone slack off like this on a survival show. These fruits are actually called death apples by the locals. This guava tree is a highly toxic plant. Eating its fruit can cause various symptoms like swelling of the mouth and throat. A doctor came to check his oxygen levels. After a thorough checkup, it was clear the ferret was perfectly healthy, just lazy and napping. The longer I listened, the more awkward it became. Cher kept insisting they were fortunate nothing serious occurred, but Justin didn't care since he knew if he was poisoned or not. Cher kept insisting everything was fine, but Justin pretended not to care. Meanwhile, at Andrew's camp, in the middle of the night, Amber noticed the tide had risen, surrounding their shelter with seawater. In about 10 minutes, their shelter would be flooded. Andrew was still out cold, and they had no clue where to go in the dark. They could only hope for the best. On the 11th day, Nain and Kara had already said goodbye to Brent. Nain and Kara left to find a better spot, leaving Brent behind, still fixated on catching that wild boar. With his teammates gone, Brent felt a sense of peace. Meanwhile, Andrew's group began foraging as soon as the tide went out. They saw where the tide had reached the night before. Andrew was quite surprised, though he talked about being scared. He didn't actually do anything about it. However, Trick believed their shelter was high enough and the tide wasn't a concern. Amber, on the other hand, was concerned that if the tide extinguished their hard-earned fire, they would have a tough time ahead. It was clear the water had risen quite high, but Trick was only focused on foraging and didn't want to move the shelter. Andrew and Amber didn't agree, and this led to some conflict among the three of them. Meanwhile, Brent was now a one-man team, checking his traps every day, but he never managed to catch that wild boar. It was as if the boar was outsmarting him at every turn. Still, Brent was determined not to give up. As for Nain and Kara, they kept moving along the west coast, heading in the direction of Justin's group. Unfortunately, if they had gone towards Andrew's group, it might have been better. Without a map, they were just wandering aimlessly. The jungle path was tricky, and they had to watch every step. Meanwhile, Cher and Justin's group struggled with constant hunger. With fewer people, finding food was tough. Cher now had a knee injury, and they kept pushing each other to continue. Cher felt guilty for slowing Justin down. This made him feel guilty, but Justin kept encouraging him to hang in there, even though he was doing all the work himself. But he enjoyed Zill's company. Meanwhile, Kara and Nain had been searching for 3 hours without finding a good spot for a shelter. By now, they were both hungry and exhausted. Will they find their other teammates? Stay tuned for the next episode. While others are barely surviving, starving multiple times a day and avoiding the bathroom for days, Brent is living the high life. He's enjoying roasted meat every meal, turning leftovers into smoked meat, and sipping coconut water whenever he's thirsty. Is this survival or a vacation? By day 11, Kara and Nain have left Brent and are searching for a beach. Exhausted and starving, Kara feels like she's about to collapse. Nain gives her a can of water and takes good care of her. Previously, Nain's failure to care for his family had led to his teammates quitting. So this time, he is determined not to lose another partner. They even make a pact to find jobs together on 58.com after the competition. After resting, they continue their journey. In the mangroves, Kara smells smoke, and they eventually meet up with Justin's group. Nain and Kara successfully join them. Nain reunites with his wife and children, and if it weren't for the crowd, they would have already started their duet of artistic movements. Nain curiously asks why there are only 2 people, and his wife briefly explains the situation and why Candace quit. Kara also shares their story. Kara and Nain had run away together, and now Chill was injured and needed their help. Kara was shocked. After all their effort, there was no meat to greet them, and they had to care for an injured person. But Nain saw it differently. Chill was his teammate last season, and he was set on making it up to him. He pointed to the sea, saying it would be their new workplace. Justin was also pleased, hoping they could help gather more food. Meanwhile, Brent continued his solo mission to catch the wild boar, which kept avoiding his trap. Brent sets up the trap again where the boar usually passes. With a trap like that, he thinks he can catch a wild boar? At this point, I can't tell who the real pig is. Even the boar would call Brent a pig if it saw this. On day 12, Andrew's group's beach is gradually getting flooded. Most of the area is starting to submerge, meaning Andrew's group will soon need a new shelter. With the water rising like this, they might be sleeping in it tonight. Trick doesn't want to move. Although the high tide is bad, it brings a lot of food, and he doesn't want to lose the resources here. However, Amber thinks that if their fire gets flooded, they'll be back to the Stone Age. Andrew and Amber want to move, but Trick is focused on finding food. Amber tasted the water they collected today, and it's already salty. The rising tide has contaminated their fresh water source. They don't know what to do next and need to come up with a new plan quickly. Without water, they won't survive for long. Nain asked Chill what they had eaten. Justin mentioned they only had sea snails and hermit crabs, leaving everyone starving. He suggested waiting for the tide to go out before searching for food, but Kara insisted they needed protein immediately to recover from their long journey. When the tide receded, they foraged on the shore, gathering more sea snails and hermit crabs. Unfortunately, these crabs were tiny and insufficient to feed everyone. Today's haul was just a third of yesterday's, and everyone was struggling. Trick caught a fish and brought it back, but Amber broke the bad news, asking him to taste the collected water. Their fresh water was gone, and they needed a new source. It seemed Trick had to choose between food and fresh water. He knew there was fresh water at the end of the beach and planned to explore there. The group mainly relied on Trick for food, while Amber and Andrew played poker in the shelter after eating their fill. Amber and Andrew only needed fresh water. If fresh water can be found, moving is a minor issue. Trick goes out alone to search for fresh water. He knows what his teammates are worried about, but he's used to handling emergencies. Surviving with such teammates is truly a blessing. Trick discovers many coconut trees with plenty of coconuts. The beach is quite beautiful, but Trick doesn't find fresh water here. These coconuts are enough to last them until day 21. Trick returns to share the news with his teammates. Meanwhile, Justin's group has started lunch, but what's in the pot is far from enough. Why can't they catch any fish? Even in a resource-rich mangrove, they couldn't find anything, proving that unskilled players would go hungry anywhere. Brent, exploring near the shelter, found an iron rod and planned to turn it into a weapon for hunting wild boars, hoping for a hearty meal. When Trick returned, he told his teammates there was no fresh water but plenty of coconuts. They decided to move the shelter there, prioritizing fresh water. Trick agreed, and after some discussion, they plan to start early tomorrow. It's now day 13, and Nain and Justin are responsible for fetching water every day. Although they're not affected by the rising tides here, the water source is a 20-minute walk from the shelter. This daily trek is wearing Nain out. Nain thinks the shelter's location isn't great and plans to build a raft to travel along the coastline. This might be a good way out since they can't get food here. Justin agrees with Nain's idea, mainly to take care of the injured Chill. Andrew's group has already started moving. Trick and Andrew are carrying all their belongings to the spot Trick discovered yesterday under the coconut trees. It turns out the stick they found is for picking coconuts. Andrew finally managed to get one down. Despite his size, he's passed on his knowledge to Amber. Although they have an abundance of coconuts, the coconut water is a diuretic, and drinking too much can lead to dehydration. Amber believes they can't rely on coconuts for long and need to find fresh water. When Nain and Justin return to the shelter, they share their plan to move to the beach where there might be better resources, and they intend to build a raft to go out to sea. Everyone agreed with this suggestion. When the tide went out, Nain went to the beach to check the terrain. He wanted to find some driftwood. There were many bottles and a large plastic barrel. They collected as many large containers as possible to build the raft. Chill was doing what he could at the shelter, untying ropes for the team to use. With Nain and Kara joining, Chill saw a glimmer of hope. The path was full of rocks. The journey was tough. They gathered wood along the shore, which looked large but was surprisingly light, perfect for building a raft. Soon, they had a big pile. Meanwhile, Brent was lying in his shelter when a wild boar appeared near the trap again. He soon heard the sound of the wire sliding. This boar really didn't know what was coming. Brent knew its time was up when he heard the squeals nearby. On the morning of the 14th day, Brent woke up knowing he had caught the boar. Now, he just needed to grab his weapon and finish the job. Luckily, his weapon was already prepared. Next up, a feast. It was time for pork. Brent checked the trap and found the boar dead, likely strangled by the wire. This boar weighed about 150 pounds, enough to last Brent 21 days. Now, he just needed to quickly deal with the boar's innards. Using a stone, Brent skinned the boar. One leg weighed around 30 pounds, perfect for smoking and preserving for a long time. Meanwhile, Andrew's group had a new plan. They decided to leave the beach and find a new shelter, heading north to make evacuation easier later. It was going to be a long hike. Only they would dare to do something like this. After living it up on the beach for so long, they packed up all their belongings and left. Andrew was empty-handed, Umbo wore a helmet, and only Tarek was loaded with bags. I really like players like Tarek. Tomorrow is the evacuation day, and Shill's leg still shows no signs of improvement. Today, they need to build a raft, which requires a lot of rope. Kara sat on the beach untying ropes. They planned to use large plastic barrels as the core flotation and then tie driftwood around them to make the raft.
Man, he's just
basically,
I feel like he just
Nain was
wants to
doing all
redeem
the work
himself,
while Kara and Justin rested in the shade.
Goes off and he is doing
Despite
it
Nain
more
working
for
so hard,
Rachel than
some
he is
people had
himself.
different ideas. Fortunately, Jara, Nain's partner, was there to help him out. Joining Justin's group didn't bring any benefits. Meanwhile, Brent had a lot of pork, more than he could eat. He made the excess into smoked jerky. With so much meat, he didn't know how to eat it all. Brent cut off a piece of roasted meat, which was very tough and hard to tear, but he said it was delicious. After not having meat for over 10 days, it tasted amazing. He had been too hungry to even go to the bathroom before, but now he planned to eat his fill and finally relieve himself. Brent was undoubtedly the most comfortable now. Andrew's group had been gone for over 3 hours. Navigating the mangrove area is a nightmare. You can easily get your feet pricked. The dense jungle is equally terrifying, with bees ready to sting at every step. There are also plenty of crocodiles in the water. Terry felt something bump his stick. Amber's journey has been incredibly tough, as everything here is dangerous. Nain's group finally finished building the raft and successfully floated on it. Nain is undoubtedly the hero of the day. With this raft, Chill can leave the island, but Kara, who worked alongside them, feels a bit jealous. Jealous of Nain's favoritism towards Chill, Nain went back to the shelter to inform Chill and helped him onto the raft. This special treatment made Justin and Kara envious. Nain even arranged a unique spot for Chill, which moved Chill so much that he almost wanted to give Nain his first blood right there. This made the other teammates feel awkward. Kara, as Nain's teammate, probably turned into the queen of jealousy, thinking, I ran away with you, and now you're here flirting with someone else, treating other teammates like ex-wives and me like a mistress? Chill, meanwhile, cried even more, and the more he cried, the more Nain doted on him. The tension was so thick that if they didn't leave soon, they might end up playing poker with Nain all night. But Chill, aware of his own limitations, chose to quit the competition to avoid burdening Nain. All of Nain's efforts for Chill were in vain. Losing Chill again was a devastating blow for Nain. What other thrilling challenges await them? Stay tuned for the next episode. This man is like a god. He single-handedly defeated a massive wild boar on the deserted island and made smoked meat from its leg, successfully feeding a group of followers. On the 14th day, as previously noted, Andrew's group left the beach and headed north to find fresh water. The inland path was extremely tough to navigate. Amber was the first to complain about the scorching weather as they left the beach in search of fresh water. After a grueling 5-hour trek, they finally found a stream and waterfall. This was the fresh water source they had been searching for. Nearby, they also saw smoke, which led them to Brent. It was clear that the smoke was from Brent's smoked pork. Brent heard their calls from his shelter. However, he wasn't planning to welcome them. Andrew's group successfully met Brent, and Andrew was thrilled to see new companions. But Brent wasn't very sociable.
Happy to see us?
No.
Brent's responses were somewhat awkward, but Andrew's thick skin and cheerful demeanor lightened the mood. Brent displayed his smoked pork and invited them into his shelter. Andrew, enticed by the pork, was eager to stay. Brent told them his teammates had left and he planned to search for them once the pork was ready. Seeing Brent's abundance of pork, Andrew immediately tried to join forces with him. Do you think we can join you or follow your journey? Let's see.
We'll see.
Andrew proposed teaming up with Brent. Brent didn't immediately agree but generously shared his meat with them. Amber admired Brent's skills, especially since he was feeding them. Brent handed out pieces of meat to everyone. Andrew and Amber savored their meal. The island now had two groups, one well-fed and the other struggling. Justin's group survived on the beach by catching crabs. These small crabs were their main food source. Although they were on the beach, they couldn't fish, making resources scarce for them. They planned to have a good meal today and leave tomorrow, but on this deadly beach, their best meal was small crabs and snails. Today was destined to be another day of hunger. The food they collected in hours wasn't enough. They made paddles from plastic barrels. This made it easier to row their boat daily. Meanwhile, Andrew's group spent the night in Brent's shelter. At times, life here felt quite pleasant. But ever since Kara and Nain joined Justin's group, they hadn't had a proper meal. They were constantly hungry, highlighting the need for a capable teammate. Justin felt very weak and feverish in the middle of the night. She had a slight fever and hoped tomorrow's translation would go well. By the 15th day, Justin's condition remained unchanged. As the last girl in the group, would all three have to quit due to health issues before the translation? The doctor checked on Justin and, noticing her high temperature, advised her to lie in the water to cool down. Justin's body was in a state of depletion and couldn't regulate its temperature. The doctor warned that if her temperature didn't drop, she'd need hospitalization. But Justin preferred death over quitting. After hours of shivering in the water with Kara, her temperature stabilized and the doctor advised her to stay hydrated. Justin rejoined the team to continue the challenge. However, she was still very weak and needed some rest. As they planned their next move, Nain was relieved to see Justin back on her feet. After all, having one more person to help made things easier. The hardest part was for Kara. Originally, 2 men took care of her, and she could enjoy being pampered daily. But after joining Justin's group, she was constantly hungry and had to look after 2 men, which was harder than nannying. Andrew's group had already started exploring the area around Brent's shelter. Terry thought everything was great here, except for the lack of firewood. Collecting firewood was a tough job. Brent checked the roast pork and saw the leg meat was still too juicy to be fully cooked. Brent decided to slice the leg meat thinly for roasting. The leg meat had to be processed quickly or it would spoil easily. This delayed Brent's relocation plan by another day. After Justin had rested well, they were ready to move. They had many essential items to carry, like the magnifying glass for starting fires and the carbon cloth for filtering water. Everyone took a share and started moving. Despite being on a deserted island beach, yet struggled to find food and were constantly hungry. They were on the west side of the island, planning to head north along the coast, aiming to reach the northernmost evacuation point and wait for rescue on the 21st day. Unsure of the journey's duration, they prepared everything. However, Brent's group didn't know Nane's group had left. They were preoccupied with roasting meat at their shelter. They set the boar leg on an iron rack to roast, which helped it dry out. Despite having lots of meat, only Brent decided how it was shared. They couldn't just eat the meat whenever they wanted. Brent controlled it to keep his 3 followers in line. Since Andrew got here, he hadn't had a moment's rest. Unlike the easy days on the beach with grilled fish and drinks, they now had to depend on Brent. Meanwhile, Justin's group had been at sea for 3 hours, either exhausted or sunburned. They had only managed to row 3 kilometers in that time. Walking would have been quicker. Kara worried about Justin's health, fearing she might get a fever and have to quit the challenge. During their movement, some issues seemed to arise. The wood where Kara was sitting started to come loose. They had to dock quickly. Nane's legs were used like a motor, which was exhausting for him, but Nane was strong, so he managed to hold on. When they finally docked, Kara noticed that the area was all lava rock. It wasn't a place to survive, but their raft couldn't continue. They decided to switch from water to land travel. Brent's roasted meat was finally ready. The boar leg was cut into small pieces and turned into jerky. Andrew praised Brent profusely, feeling a bit embarrassed himself. Finding Brent felt like finding a leader for Andrew's group. Now, it seemed all plans had to follow Brent's lead. Brent decided not to keep searching for their teammates. Instead, he planned to head north to meet them. They got everything ready today. They aimed to head north at dawn. Justin's group had been walking for an hour and a half, which was exhausting for the already ill Justin. It was clearly wearing him out, and Nane could see Justin's struggle. Luckily, they arrived at a new beach spot. They found a grove of coconut trees and decided to stay there for a while. Justin cooled off by washing her head in the sea, which helped. It wasn't ideal for a sick person to keep getting wet. Nane aimed to find a good spot for a shelter. There were plenty of leaves here, so they could sleep directly on the ground. Justin was feeling very uncomfortable. Nane and Kara set out to gather fire-starting materials but found the inland paths too challenging, so they headed back to the beach to search instead. Without a fire tonight, the cold could be fatal for Justin. Luckily, Zil had made some char cloth earlier. Char cloth ignites easily, making it perfect for starting fires. Kara used it to try and start a fire before sunset. Using a magnifying glass to focus the sunlight, Kara successfully started a fire. With Justin still running a fever, the fire was essential. Her lens method worked perfectly. Soon, smoke began to rise. As the char cloth ignited, a gentle blow got the fire going. They then carried the fire starter back to the shelter. They got the fire going in the shelter, but Justin remained feverish and might have to leave the challenge due to his illness. If that happens, Nane and Kara would be really unlucky, as they seem to face misfortune wherever they go. Kara gave Justin all her care, sleeping next to him to keep him warm. Suddenly, Justin turned red and dashed to the side to vomit, nearly making me lose my dinner from the night before. By the 16th day, Andrew's group began packing early in the morning, planning to relocate that day. Surprisingly, they discovered gasoline at the site, possibly left by the show's crew. Once ready, they set off. This time, they decided to head north on the deserted island, hoping to reach the evacuation point by day 21, despite the tough inland path. Let's hope they encounter no issues. Over in Nane's group, Justin lay exhausted early in the morning. They called the doctor again to check on him. Justin woke up drenched in sweat, and the doctor asked him some basic questions. After a day of trying to recover, Justin's condition remained the same. The doctor recommended he leave the challenge and visit a hospital for a checkup. Although Justin didn't want to quit, the doctor forced him to withdraw. Kara felt heartbroken because of this. Despite all her care and the rewards, they still lost a teammate. When Zil was there, they had to eat dog food. Now Nane had to eat dog food. The show then revealed Justin's condition, a parasitic infection in his colon. This happened because he drank untreated water. Kara was upset but still determined to finish the challenge. By now, they were pretty lost. Nane and Kara joined another team, while Andrew's group pressed on. They were clueless about the remaining distance. After 3 hours, they had only managed 3 kilometers and seemed to be on the wrong path. Who knows if they might run into Nane and Kara. The island was full of lava rocks, making the path very rough. If someone fell, they likely wouldn't need a doctor. After over 4 hours of trekking, they emerged from the jungle. The sun was blazing. Here, they saw the ocean and found fresh water. And indeed, they encountered Kara and Nane. I knew it. The show must have planned for them to take the wrong path. Surviving alone is too hard. They need to meet and help each other to make it. The two who were once hopeless now found new hope. Amber finally had a female friend. She's been eating so many sausages lately that she's tired of them. Anyway, Kara cries whenever she sees someone just to highlight her misery. Brent gave Kara some pork, ending her constant hunger. Kara felt like she was on cloud 9 eating the roasted meat. After over 10 days of hunger, she had to depend on her teammates. Kara filled them in on the situation. Brent and Tarek got ready to scout the area, stepping up as the group's leaders. What dangers will they encounter next? Stay tuned for the next video update. This is the most exciting island survival adventure I've witnessed. They have companions and even built a huge signal fire. They built a huge raft to sail away, and the thrill was like ocean surfing. On the 18th day, they started discussing the next steps early in the morning because Brent and Trick had scouted the area yesterday and found that they were not heading due north. This means they will face another round of hiking. Amber's feet were sore and aching, and he dreaded the hike, but if they wanted to leave the island, they had to hike to the evacuation point. With 4 days left until the 21st day, the 6 survival contestants met at the northwest coast the previous day. Now, they were 8 kilometers from the island's northern tip. They had to start a fire and build a raft there to venture into the open sea for rescue. Nain proposed gathering food and water today since they were nearly out of jerky. Getting protein from the sea was a good idea. Brent agreed, and they headed to the shore to gather food. Nain and Amber opted to use shore-found bottles to craft a fishing device. They cut the tops off, creating funnel-shaped traps. This device was quite simple. There were many hermit crabs on the beach, and they planned to use these crabs as bait. At low tide, Trick headed to the shore to catch seafood, hoping to find some sea urchins to eat. The water was deep, but luckily the waves were small. Wearing a diving mask, Trick searched for seafood. Using a knife, he flipped over rocks and crevices, finding a sea urchin that yielded just 10 grams of protein. After coming ashore, Trick showed Brent his catch, and Brent pointed out the edible parts. Soon, Trick found more sea urchins in the crevices. Trick and Brent kept collecting sea urchins. Brent was excited about Trick's hunting skills and thought Trick was very strong. Amber and Andrew searched for food by the shore, using the fishing device but only catching 5 small fish. They could make a small fish soup with these. There were plenty of fish on the beach, so with more tries, they should catch more. Trick cut open the sea urchins he caught and shared them with everyone. Although it felt like they hadn't eaten anything, it still provided some nutrition. At least everyone got a small share. Amber and the others also caught some sea cockroaches. They looked gross, but they were still meat. One bite made Andrew throw up immediately. You can imagine how gross it was. It tasted like rotten eggs. It was also very sandy and had a rubbery texture. Everyone was laughing at Andrew's reaction, but Brent was different. He saw it as survival food and didn't care about the taste. He just wanted to replenish his energy for the hike tomorrow. Replenishing energy was vital for him. By 6 in the evening, they were already in the shelter, ready to rest. Why not keep fishing while it's still light out? They were all looking forward to the hike tomorrow. Completing it meant winning the $100,000 prize. On the 19th day, they started preparing for the hike early in the morning. Anbois was making insoles to wear. The island had many rocky areas, so they had to be careful. Anbois had already cut his foot. Andrew tied ropes around his feet, hoping it would make walking more comfortable. Carla was also making shoes. He used leather to make them. Leather shoes were comfortable but not slip-resistant. Everyone was making shoes, but Brent had a different idea. He chose to make a walking stick based on his previous experience walking on the island's rocks. He believed a walking stick was better than shoes. Nain crafted stylish sandals. Nain joked that he could outrun Usain Bolt in them. Carla also finished her outfit. She and Anbois wrapped their feet in cloth. Nain felt a bit left out, clearly treated as an outsider. This hike was very important to Nain. He aimed to finish the challenge for sheer. Oh my gosh, Anbois' reputation is well deserved. Before, we had to blur out his big waves with 2 layers of mosaic. Now, wrapped in a layer of rag, they look even bigger. Those waves could drain a guy's nutrition for 10 days. After getting ready, they set off. The hike was very tough. They had no map or compass. The island's terrain was complex and densely wooded, making it easy to get lost. The coastline was mostly rocky, making walking painful. But none of this distracted me from Anbois. To avoid getting lost, they planned to follow the coastline. But this was very dangerous. Carla wasn't wearing much, while Anbois was fully geared up, clearly treating us as outsiders. The rocks were loose, and one misstep could send you into the shark-infested sea. They had to cross a gap, but everyone made it. The journey was slow, mostly crawling. They decided to switch to land. The path was easier but longer and easier to get lost on. After 3 hours, they were exhausted. The sun was scorching. If they kept going, they might die on the way. Trick was leading the way. His skills were indeed impressive. Trick then told everyone that straight ahead was due north. Even though Nain still looked confused, it didn't matter. Just follow the group, no need to think too much. They were at the island's northernmost point, with a beautiful beach nearby. They were eager to reach it. It was already 4 p.m., and they had 2 hours until sunset to cross this water. Despite the saltwater crocodiles, the group's numbers gave them confidence. Upon arrival, they found the beach was just a rocky, stone-filled area. It wasn't as good as they thought. The beach was littered with trash, but they could use it to build a raft to reach the open sea. Wow, Anwa's headlights were so bright I couldn't look away. She was always the center of attention. They didn't have time to build a shelter today, so they slept under the trees. The plan for tomorrow was to build a boat and leave. Around 4 a.m. everyone was asleep. Only Trick was still awake. His energy was incredible. It was the 20th day, and today they planned to build a raft to go to sea. Everyone was on the beach collecting useful materials, tying together anything that could float. As long as it could float, it would work. Nain had raft building experience, though his last attempt failed. This time, he was set on succeeding, though he kept his plan to himself. They just had to wait for the team to build it, which needed a lot of rope. They untied some abandoned tow ropes, and Nain was modifying a broken flotation device, trying to connect it with wood. Damn, every time I see Anbua, I need a pack of tissues. Nain tried to make a base for the float so people could sit on it. Anyway, if Andrew saw a good raft, he'd sit on it. Trick and Brent were preparing to light a signal fire on the mountaintop. The rest stayed to continue building the raft. They planned to set up a signal fire here, which required firewood. They collected some wood nearby and quickly built a huge signal fire. The waves were very strong now. Going to sea on a raft would be difficult. Nain's float was also ready. Anwa's bra needed to be fully secured, or else you might see something. Although Anwa's features were very prominent, Carla's skin was incredibly fair. Their raft was almost done, but they weren't sure if it could hold everyone. They were discussing the raft. Nain and Carla were arguing. Carla refused to alter the raft structure. Anbua appeared just as confused. Those headlights are huge.
This island's terrible, but we're almost gone. Everyone to feel okay? I'm really just trying to be a peacekeeper between Anna. I'm just trying to stay middleman.
Put the floats on the metal barrels. This setup is very buoyant but tricky to balance. Brent and Trick are preparing to start a fire. Trick is holding some leaves to get a spark. He thinks the raft construction is simple. They should be able to finish it.
Where's the hatchet? How you open the coconut? Can we get that coconut done? I just need the hatchet.
Jesus Christ, I'm trying to get the husk off the coconut.
That's enough. I'm asking for the hatchet.
Shut up, both of you.
Tell me your name. What's going on, man?
He's cutting the coconut.
Told him I needed to just get some coconut husk.
Stop, we're done. All of us are done. Fighting today, and we are survivalists like children.
Actually, Trick and Nan's argument seems to have a bit of racial tension, just like Brent, who never really sees Nan clearly. Nan is the only one here with dark skin. Fortunately, they can still keep their cool. Now it feels
Right now,
like a mix of chaotic emotions. And I'm really sad. I'm angry because of how he treated me.
Treating me this way.
I never thought this would happen. In the end, Andrew stepped in as a mediator. He wanted to resolve the team's conflicts. He decided to talk to Trick and Nain, given his long-standing teamwork with Trick and their strong familiarity. Because
we have much greater things at stake right now. I want us to deal with this, and I freaking love both of you. What I know of both of you is you are incredibly strong, smart. I'm just hoping that we can step back from ego and then kill the rest of this challenge together.
Having known you, 99% of our interactions at this point have completely great. And your energy and everything you bring to this challenge, which is why I wanted to talk to you.
I think I got too heated just because I felt like I was being I felt bullied, you know? And we're feeling the stress of getting off this island. I really appreciate you talking this out with me.
I feel like we do need to hug this out.
I love you both.
One more day, you'll
love you too, man.
We're so close.
I'm really sorry, baby.
in the end, they made up with Andrew as the peacemaker. Wow, the raft is huge. They were almost done building it. They decided to use the tattered cloths for sails. Under Andrew's flashlight, they finally completed the raft. Everyone put in a lot of effort in the final stage. The raft is very sturdy and can easily hold several people. Damn, the raft is really big. Today, they finally finished all the work. Next, they just have to wait for the 21st day. That night, everyone was excited because they would be leaving the next day. Waiting for them is a $100,000 reward. They can't wait for dawn so they can go home and see their families. On the 21st day, they woke up early. Anbua looked even more beautiful, maybe because of makeup or a beauty filter. Brent and Trick started a big bonfire with a pile of wood and some gasoline. Next, they had to take the raft out to the open sea. The bonfire was lit, signaling for rescue. They needed to reach the open sea quickly, but the waves were huge and the area was infested with sharks and eroded rocks. It was just past 7 a.m. Everyone was ready to go. Anbua, look over here. Can we get a close-up shot, cameraman? They fought to paddle the raft out, but waves kept pushing them back, making it feel like an amusement park ride. Getting out to sea by paddling alone felt nearly impossible. They spent over half an hour stuck near the shore. Everyone paddled hard and finally left the coast. The waves outside were smaller, and they paddled for 3 hours. Everyone was worn out, so they hoisted the sail to let the wind carry them. Soon, the show's rescue boat appeared ahead. They were finally rescued, ending their 21-day survival challenge on the island. Where will they survive next season? Can't wait for next season's updates. Wow, Envoy is amazing.